Boom, you looking for this?
Welcome back to Boom Shot. I'm Kel, this is Colby, and we have just finished watching the latest episode, or no, the first episode of the Moon Knight series.
My brain is broken.
It literally, my brain is broken as well. But we're going to dive into the deepest question, get you some answers. We have done our research. We are amply prepared to give you sort of answers because nobody knows what the heck is going on. So let's jump right into it. All right. So let's jump into the let's start off with a quick backstory, okay? And we're gonna give you a comic version and what we think is happening in the show, like as a reference to comics.
All right.
So comic wise, you can break down the comic version.
Okay, comic wise, we did our research here. Comic wise, Marc Spector was on the brink of death,
pretty much
in a desert, right? And Khonshu offers him life in exchange for service to Khonshu, to Khonshu.
Okay.
And who is Khonshu, you might ask? Khonshu is the Egyptian god of vengeance.
Yes, he's basically Batman, but not Batman.
Who represents the moon. So that's where you get the Moon Knight.
Yeah, so he and that's why Moon Knight operates, in the nighttime, because his powers are amplified in the moon. So, and then we have a show-wise interpretation. Now, this is our interpretation. It's honestly up for debate.
Yeah, it could be
because
completely wrong.
It could just all be like a acid trip dream. We just don't know. So, show-wise, Stephen Grant is a museum historian on Egyptian culture who thinks he has a problem with sleepwalking. And this is evidence within the show. He basically has multiple traps or alerts that lets him know if he's been sleepwalking.
Yeah, they indicate if he's slept walking.
So, and we'll go over that in a minute, but basically it turns out he shares a body with Marc Spector, who is a subordinate of Khonshu, the Egyptian moon god, right? And Khonshu plays the same character in the comics, right?
Yeah, so that part seems to be the same with Marc Spector, but how we'll get into that in the questions, but their relationship is what is going to differ from the comics.
Comically, Marc Spector is obviously Moon Knight, and he is in the show as well. But Marc Spector has an alter, that's what they call it, because Marc Spector has dissociative identity disorder. And if you don't know what that is, basically it's this theory that you can have multiple personalities within the same, brain, mind, subconscious, I guess is what you're trying to go for. And basically, Marc Spector in the comics has an alter of Stephen Grant, but in the show it's reversed. Stephen Grant has an alter of Marc Spector, who is a subordinate of Khonshu. So it's kind of backwards in how it is in the comics.
Yeah, and it could be that, because I don't know, I feel like Stephen Grant, he's trying to make sense of what's going on.
Yeah.
He's trying to, or perhaps this could be wrong.
Yeah.
But he thinks he's sleepwalking, but in reality it's just Marc Spector taking over, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so I guess because when you think about it, Stephen Grant is alive and he's conscious whenever it's daytime, but as soon as he goes to sleep, I guess it's easier to take over.
Yeah.
And so which means Marc Spector is out there doing crime fighting or whatever whatever. It looks like he's trying to take down another cult pretty much.
Yeah.
But so that's the way I see it. I don't know what my theory is. My theory is that Stephen Grant existed. He was a guy, and then Marc Spector was a guy.
Yeah, as opposed to in the comics.
Yeah, as opposed to in the comics where Marc Spector was the only dude, and he has an alter of Stephen Grant. Right. So I feel like Stephen Grant existed, and Marc Spector existed.
I think so too. Yeah.
And basically, the same kind of story happened, and we'll talk about this in one of our biggest questions. I'm just going to explain my theory, but there's a different question regarding this. But basically, Marc Spector died, and Khonshu allowed him basically gave his soul to another body.
Yeah.
And so Marc Spector and Khonshu, or Marc Spector and Stephen Grant exist in the same body, and it seems like dissociative identity disorder, but in reality, it's not. They just exist in the same body.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's interesting how this episode, because really, like you said in the comics, it's all Marc Spector.
Yeah.
And then he's got different alters.
Mm-hmm.
But this, it's we go straight into Stephen Grant.
Yeah, exactly.
It seems like he is the main character.
Yeah.
So that does make it seem like they're two different people.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's kind of maybe Disney's trying to throw us off, or maybe they're adapting the source material a little bit. I'm not really sure what kind of liberty they're taking. And honestly, after watching the episode, I have no idea. You don't know what route they're taking because it's It's so confusing.
We don't start with we'll get into that too in the questions, but we don't start really at the beginning.
No,
we don't know much about Marc Spector.
No, we don't really know anything about Stephen Grant either. Like, it throws you right into the story. Like, there's no backstory at all. Like, it picks up, like, as if it's present day. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And not to say that it doesn't do a lot of world building, because as we've said, every first episode needs a lot of world building. It's a requirement.
But what I think is great on the part of them doing that is you relate to Stephen Grant so much.
Yeah.
He doesn't really know what's going on in his own life, and neither do we. Like,
that's a very good point. And honestly, it makes you feel for him in a way. Yeah. Like you want to, not gonna say you want to relate, but you want to empathize.
Right.
With,
like, I feel bad for him.
Yeah, because the man's just trying to live his life, but he's been kind of like hacked by Marc Spector and Khonshu as just like kind of a vessel for Marc Spector to carry out vengeance. That's basically what it seems like to me.
Yeah, and it really hits home when, like, he thinks it's Friday, right, and it turns out being Sunday,
and he's missed a date,
and he shows up at where they're gonna have the date, and she's like, "Where were you? I was there 2 days ago." And
that was really sad. And like I said, if you watched any of our previous Moon Knight reaction trailers, but basically it kind of reminds me of Batman Arkham Knight and the Joker. And I've said this before, but in Batman Arkham Knight, or in Arkham City rather, Batman was infected with the Joker's blood, right? And so in the next game, Batman is slowly turning into Joker, right? And it's not like he's like turning into Joker like physically. No, like his brain is being like, but it's nothing like overtly spiritual. It's just like the way Joker affects Batman, and like he's inside of his brain, and he's like, if Batman commits, for example, if he commits the kill, like if he breaks the no kill rule, then Joker's won. You know what I'm saying? So then Joker's fully able to take over.
Yeah.
And so it's not like exactly the same, but it seems kind of similar to me. Like they're both fighting for control, and does it seem like that to you?
Yeah, it's interesting too, because there's two voices in his head, right? We hear the deeper voice, and the subtitles as like just male voice.
Yeah.
And then later on, we hear Marc Spector's voice,
which is an American Oscar Isaac, is what it sounds like. So the deeper voice, we're gonna go ahead and assume that's Khonshu, right? Yeah, that's what I'm assuming. Yeah, but you had a good comparison to a symbiote.
That's actually what I was thinking of when I brought that up, because the deeper voice, it reminded me a lot of Venom.
Yeah.
How Venom would just talk in his head.
Yeah.
And that would be the Khonshu part, but what's different is you also have Marc Spector.
Yeah, so it's like a three-way symbiotic relationship, except they aren't symbiotic at all. Like by the end of the series, probably by the 6th episode, they'll like, Marc Spector will willingly give up to Stephen Grant, Stephen Grant will willingly give up to Marc Spector, so on and so forth. But like right now, it seems in very much disarray.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's good, because it's going to give a lot of character progression throughout the series. You're going to see visible progression.
Yeah, like Stephen Grant doesn't even know.
No.
He doesn't even know who Marc Spector is. Like, they've been all doing it while he's asleep, right? That's why he's scared to fall asleep.
And it's funny, because like it's Stephen Grant. That's what makes him seem like such like like just a vessel. That's all he pretty much is, because it's like Marc Spector and Khonshu know what's going on, but Stephen Grant's just been left in the dark and has been being used this entire time. Like, even Khonshu refers to him as the idiot. The idiot's taking over. So I think that's hilarious. Like, I don't think it's hilarious, but I think it like just adds like a human element. Like, this guy's just being manipulated and used by these two people.
He's just trying to live his life at this point.
And it's sad to watch, because it's like you can relate. You're like, man, I'm like, I feel bad for him. Like, I hope he succeeds, but he can't, because he has no chance. He doesn't even know what's going on.
Yeah.
But I mean, let's that's kind of like, I guess, our interpretation of what's going on inside the world of Moon Knight. But let's head into the biggest question. So what do you think, Stephen? Biggest questions, but this is the biggest question to me and you. What is Stephen Grant and Marc Spector's relationship in the show? Like, what do you think? We kind of talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, this is kind of like the biggest question in general. So we've kind of covered it a little bit. But yeah, I think Stephen Grant was just kind of living his life, right? Yeah. And we don't know if he had DID before. Mm-hmm. We don't know if Marc Spector had DID before.
Yes.
We don't know if either of them did, if both of them did, one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we're just gonna say Stephen Grant was living his life.
Yes.
And then for some reason, what do you think this is kind of a big question too. What do you think the motive was that they chose Stephen Grant?
So you're saying assuming that Stephen Grant and Marc Spector were two separate people. So what we kind of came up with off screen is that maybe Stephen Grant showed all the risk factors. Basically, risk factor is like something like a condition that could lead to something. Yeah. So maybe Stephen Grant showed all the risk factors for dissociative identity disorder, so it would be easier to explain away, right?
Right. Yeah, they would be able to get away with doing things at night. Yeah. And he would be like the sleepwalking thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like he has like a certain mental, like I'm trying to think of the word, but like there's a word right there, but I can't think of it. Basically, he has all the risk factors for some kind of mental condition that would be easier to explain away, right?
Right.
And so that would I think would be a motive. Like, okay, so this guy's not going to wonder what's going on. It's not like he was completely normal, 8 months ago, and now he's just weird, like, and people are going to notice it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it'd be easier to, I guess, hide an identity. Maybe is what I'm trying to.
So yeah, it seems in the comics, Marc Spector has DID, but it seems in this interpretation, it's going to be that Stephen Grant does, right?
Yes.
Or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, some way, which we've already explained, we think they're two separate people, and now Marc Spector's just inhabited the body, right?
Yeah, so, yeah, it's like, I guess the reasoning behind it we're saying is when Marc Spector and Khonshu were looking for somebody after he died, they chose him because it wouldn't seem so abnormal.
Yeah, exactly. That's that. Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's what you were saying. Sorry. No, I agree with that. That's 100%. But it's weird. It's just a very weird, I don't know, way to see things. Because like you want to interpret it one way, but then you look at the comics and it's kind of different.
Yeah.
So it's not like I want to jump out into conclusion and say that this is what's happening, because you really can't. You really don't know.
We really don't know right now.
But this kind of leads into a next question is, how long has this been happening? Because, like, for example, if Stephen Grant has been displaying all the risk factors for dissociative identity disorder, but he was completely normal for the first part of his life, then how long has this been happening, and have people noticed?
Yeah. Well, we get the phone calls, or missed phone calls from Layla, and who's the one phone call that was from somebody else?
Or something like that. It's a French guy. They're friends in the comics. It's a cameo, but it's Duchamp.
Right.
Duchamp or whatever. But apparently, I think his name's like Frenchy Duchamp or something. I don't know.
But anyways, yeah. Stephen Grant calls back from Marc Spector's phone, right? Mm-hmm. And that's another thing making it seem like they're two different people. Because he had car keys and a different phone. Yeah,
but I'm thinking... Hold up, before you continue that thought, what if Marc Spector is trying to earn his life back from Khonshu so he can be with Layla?
Ooh, that's interesting.
Like, maybe he's not, his goal isn't just, like, his goal is to serve Khonshu to receive life back in his own body. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe he's in an Egyptian tomb or whatever. If it goes by the comic storyline, basically... Marc Spector tried to raid this Egyptian tomb and basically had an encounter, in a near-death experience, had an encounter with Khonshu and was resurrected. So maybe he's trying to get his own life back so he can live with Layla. And he's just doing Khonshu's bidding until he can do that. I just thought about that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I don't know what you think about that, but that's just a thought that bounced off my head. We can talk about it more in a minute, but continue on with what you were saying.
I completely am thinking about what you said now. What was I saying? What was I saying before?
How long has this been happening? Basically, Layla had been calling.
Oh, yeah. And then when she answers the phone, she's like, it's been months. I thought you were dead.
Yeah.
So we can assume that it's been at least a few months and possibly longer, depending on how long it took for her to be like, start calling him and stuff.
Yeah, so I guess what we can assume is that Marc Spector's been missing for a couple of months now and has been raining vengeance since those couple of months, which... If that's the case and our hypothesis is correct, then Stephen Grant started acting weird a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Which I think is I feel like that's a pretty solid like way to view this right now, because I don't think there's any better way to view it. Which I think people on the internet obviously all have their different interpretations, but I feel like this is the easiest. This is like Occam's razor. It's the least amount of assumptions to the truth.
Yeah.
So I think that's the best way. Like, but basically, this has been happening for a couple months. We know, right? And that was confirmed by the phone call. But I love how in that phone call, just when Oscar Isaac or Stephen Grant's talking, rather, he said like Layla calls him Mark, and he's like, "Who the heck is Mark?" And then she starts freaking out, like, "What the heck?" And he's like, "Why'd you call me that?" And then she hangs up, and then he tries to call her back, and nothing. So it's just really weird. Like there was a lot of scenes in this show that were like the first episode that were so trippy. Like we can get into that later.
So kind of based on that response, we can maybe Marc Spector didn't have DID, right? Because that would mean Stephen Grant isn't an alter. Yeah, because she would have recognized that if she knew him very well.
That's a very good point. Like if Layla was in some way, I guess we can assume maybe like a wife or a love interest to Marc Spector, then she would have known that he had some kind of disorder. That's a very good point. But who is Layla? Who is Layla?
Yeah, so in the comics, Marlene is Marc Spector's love interest. Yeah, and we haven't heard of any Marlene in this show, so perhaps Layla is the interpretation of Marlene. Yeah, and I don't know. She could be, but I don't see why they would make two different love interests for him. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a Marlene and a Layla. It would make more sense if she's just an interpretation.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like, and part of the backstory is that when it was Marc Spector and a bunch of his, a couple of his friends, when they went to go into the archaeological site, they one of his friends turned on him basically. And Marc Spector saved Marlene, and that's when he met Khonshu. He got brutally, fatally wounded, and he was about to die, and that's when he met Khonshu. But so that would make sense that this is kind of a combination of characters, which I think is good because it kind of like because there's a character named Layla, right, and then there's a character named Marlene, so it's just a good way to bridge the two. So that question, I think we've got a pretty solid answer on that question. And number 4, this kind of flips to the other side of the coin. So we're talking a lot about Stephen Grant and Marc Spector, but we haven't talked about Arthur, who is he's definitely the big bad of this season.
The opening of the show too, dude.
Yeah, I think his name's Arthur Harrow. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's Arthur Harrow. So we just want to ask the question, are Arthur's powers actually from Ammit? Which, if you don't know what Ammit is, or who Ammit is, I guess, rather, it's the Egyptian god of, is it justice, I guess? Or the goddess of death, or the god of death, something like that.
Yeah. And Arthur's trying to spin it as if Ammit is the decider of justice. Yeah, so in Egyptian mythology, and we've heard this from our good friends at New Rockstars who have no idea that we exist. But basically, I don't know much about Egyptian mythology. I'm gonna be honest with you, but basically, Anubis or whatever, the cat or whatever, I guess I don't know, is basically the justice. Right? It decides what if a person's good or bad, right? And then from there, if they're good, they go somewhere else. If they're bad, they go down to Ammit. Ammit then decides if the executioner, right? So whereas judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah, whereas Anubis was judge and jury, now Ammit is judge, jury, and executioner. Yeah, that's what the show's trying to spin it as, which was a good point by Eric Voss at New Rockstars.
Yeah, that's definitely. I think that's where they're going with this. Yeah, because the scales and everything that wouldn't be something just an executioner has, right? They already know. Yeah, exactly. This person dies. This person doesn't.
Exactly. Yeah. So after justice has been rendered, well, my job's easy. I got to kill him. So now, they've got or Ammit's got or Arthur, whoever's in charge. Yeah, I have no idea.
That brings up the question though: is Ammit actually the one deciding this, or is it just?
You think it...
or is Arthur legit? Is he just deciding who to kill? But why would he have killed the old lady and not killed...
Yeah, what arbitrary means are there? But yes, but he is leading a cult. That's the point.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
He is leading a cult, so maybe he's got to instill fear in some people by making them... So, basically, in a cult setting... He can kill off whoever he wants to and just claim that they were going to be bad in the future.
That's true. He could be.
And to instill fear to get people to continue to follow him, because if not, then they're going to get judged.
And he could be trying to build a stronger army
Yeah.
He said something about millions before.
Yeah.
But that would make sense. He's like, oh, this old lady's not going to help my cause much.
Yeah.
Which is sad, obviously.
Yeah, that is terrible.
And then the guy that he saves is like a dude and is more of his prime, right?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Like, honestly, I didn't even think about that. But if he's trying to raise up an army, then he obviously needs the most fit and able, people.
Yeah.
So an older lady obviously wouldn't make the cut, which is sad. But maybe she's just in the wrong place at the wrong time. But I mean, I think his powers are. I don't know if they're actually from the Egyptian, the god of death, I guess. But it seems like he's got like a legit power set to him. So either he's manipulating some kind of magic that's akin to Doctor Strange, or he has some kind of inherited power from an Egyptian god.
Yeah,
there's nothing he could do. I don't think he could do any of that by himself.
Right. Yeah. There's something. Either he's actually getting it from some type of Egyptian Amit or something else, or he's got it from some external source that has nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
And he's spinning it that way so he can control who lives and dies.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's a very good point. Like it's easier to adopt that magic to already established religious practice because it puts names behind the power. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that's a very good point. And then finally, I think this is our last question. Is will there be a flashback to the death of Marc Spector? So I guess we're just assuming Marc Spector has already died, right?
Yeah.
So will there be a flashback to this episode, or to a flashback in another episode where Marc Spector dies?
So. I think we'll get at least one full episode that doesn't show any of Stephen Grant or the concurrent timeline. Yeah. Kind of like how Book of Boba Fett was doing.
Yeah, which people may not be happy with that, but...
Well, but I think it's going to be more like one episode and then you're right back into Stephen Grant.
I mean, the way I see this episode is the first episode was about Stephen Grant experiencing and waking up to the fact that he's part of something bigger that he had no idea existed. Yeah. So if that's the case, then I think it's only fair that we get to see Marc Spector's point of view of how this all began. Maybe because that'll explain a lot about Stephen Grant for us too. Because right now we jumped into Stephen Grant's story and we're like, what the heck? What is wrong with this guy? Yeah. And then, but if we get Marc Spector's point of view from a couple months back, whenever this first happened, we can see where how Stephen Grant was before and where it all went wrong. Yeah. And now I don't know. I think that would be a good idea. Like it seems like the next episode could feature Marc Spector's side of the story.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. So hold on, this just came to my mind. Do you think it's a coincidence that he worked at like an Egyptian museum? That they chose Stephen Grant? Like
that could be, yeah.
Maybe he would be more willing to accept this.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That could be another reason.
Yeah, because if he knew about these Egyptian mythologies,
because he was really studied on it, like he knew. Yeah. I forget what the book's called, but
the Ennead, I think.
Yeah.
The Ennead, but basically, like what he's trying, like another way is, if he knows so much about that stuff already, like, and he figures out that I guess that it's quote unquote real, then he'd be obviously willing to submit because he's like, okay, well, I play a bigger role than what I originally played.
Because that would be a heck of a coincidence that he works at an Egyptian museum.
He would be like the perfect candidate if that could be the main reason why they chose Stephen Grant. Not necessarily that he has any risk factors for a certain kind of mental disease, but maybe just he already knew so much that it's like, well, if we can convince him that this stuff is true and real, then he would be willing to submit.
Yeah, I just thought of that too. Maybe it could be that, both, one or the other.
Yeah, I think that's a very good... I'm actually kind of siding with that a little bit more because it takes less assumptions because we already know that Stephen Grant is well studied in Egyptian mythology. So now all they've got to do is convince him that they're on some kind of vengeance mission or whatever. But I still feel like Marc Spector has some kind of like dark role in this somehow. Like, I feel like Layla could be a bigger role than, like, him and his relationship with Layla could be a bigger thing than what we originally thought. Yeah. Because in the trailer, it's him and Layla talking, and she's like, "You don't remember all of our adventures together," or something like that. We actually reacted to that yesterday whenever she said that, and maybe this is like Marc Spector trying to get back to his life, and maybe Khonshu offered him some kind of deal. He's got to kill Arthur because maybe Amit and Khonshu have some kind of beef. You know what I'm saying? Like this could go deeper than what we're just seeing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
Which I think is really interesting, and it gives a lot of room for story development. They've got a lot of room to go, or a lot of ways to go with this story that could confuse anybody, and that could answer, like, our theory. Our random theories could be right, whereas, some random other YouTube channel or some random people sitting on their couch talking about it, they could be right. You just never know. And that's what I like. I think that's a good way. Like, it's not a typical Marvel story where it's going to be like, okay, well, there's gonna be some bad guy that shows up. You know, they're gonna. There's a lot of ulterior motives in all of this.
Yeah, especially for a pilot. I mean, we haven't even. It seems like we're finding out answers midway through a season right now.
Yeah, exactly.
But this was just a pilot. I mean.
Yeah, exactly. It's so crazy to think about, and this show. It really didn't leave you with that much question. It just left you in like shock. Like what is even?
Yeah,
what are they even
that was nuts,
for?
man. That was an experience.
Yeah, it really was. It was a pretty good first episode, and that I give it a 8 out of 10, probably 8.5 out of 10. Probably the best pilot I've seen since Loki for a Marvel show.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely hooked and interested in it, and we'll be covering it in the future. But you got anything else to say?
Nah, I guess just. Yeah, we'll be covering it in the future. Looking forward to episode 2. Could be a flashback.
Yeah.
But we'll be here for it either way.
You know, and this video is forever proof that if we're right about anything, you will remember. You will remember. Everybody who watched this video, you will remember. We will become the new rock stars of the future. You know, all respect to Eric Voss and Matt and MT. But anyway, that's us here at Boomshot signing off. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Get on a ship.